Today's guest is Rebekah King. Rebekah is a neurolinguistics programming master practitioner and hypnotherapist with a passion for helping professional women in their 40s and 50s live a life of joy, meaning, and happiness. A former corporate professional herself, Rebekah's life took an unexpected turn after navigating years of depression and anxiety when she reached what seemed like an unsurmountable low. A pivotal encounter with a renowned Australian coach led Rebekah to delve deep into understanding her mind's mechanisms, where she embarked on a transformative journey to rewire her thinking. Her own remarkable journey inspired Rebekah to effect radical shifts in her life, becoming a source of strength and inspiration to others seeking liberation from anxiety and self-limiting beliefs. Drawing from her experiences and coupled with impressive qualifications, she now guides people in retraining their brains, facilitating immediate and profound transformations, earning her the nickname the Brain Changer. Beck, welcome to Heart-Led Changemakers. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Thanks, Maryanne. It's great to be here.
One of the things, Beck, I love about your mission is that you want to revolutionize the way that people think, in particular women, but that they too can implement game-changing shifts in their lives, enabling them to live the life that they choose in whatever that is. So my first question to you is, what led to this journey and mission? Like, why this in particular?
Why this in particular? Good question. And the short answer is because learning to do this for myself literally saved my life.
Yep.
You know, I was not in a good spot. As you said in the introduction there, I'd lived with depression and anxiety for more than 20 years. And I'd hit that proverbial rock bottom, like pull out whatever cliche you want there. And when I was introduced to this coach, there was a lot of work involved. I'm not saying it happened like that, but it saved my life, because I was at the end thinking, I don't know, I don't want to die, but I don't know how to live. And that's the long and the short of it. So that's actually what brought me to this point. And then once I turned my life around, I was like, this is incredible. You know, it's learning actually how I tick and that I can change things. This is incredible, and I need to share this with as many people as possible so that they know there is a solution, rather than just learning to manage and cope and having that life that they choose, which was the operative word that you said there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there is, when it comes to rewiring the brain, and when it comes to really settling anxiety and depression in the brain, there's a lot of neuroscience behind that to get it right. From what I've experienced and what I understand, there is a lot of neuroscience that goes on. It's not by accident that people just get over anxiety and depression. There is a lot that goes on when you're working with someone who's facilitating you and taking you through that process. From your perspective, what about the neuroscience helps with that behavior change?
I think, and that's interesting, because I think when people hear neuroscience, that they can be a little bit turned off, because we go, well, I'm no brain scientist, I'm no rocket scientist kind of thing. But it's the basics there, Maryanne. It's about understanding how your brain actually works. So what is neuroplasticity? What are neural pathways? And it's actually simplifying that so that people understand, and drawing similarities, trying to explain what a neural pathway is. So I don't talk a lot about, neurons and synapses. Again, I'm not a scientist, although I know the basics around the neuroscience and how our brain works. But it's about putting that into simple terms that people understand, so it doesn't scare them off. And, even teaching people the basics about how we form our beliefs and our values and when they're actually formed, and then the part that plays in our life over and over again, about how we're creating all of these habitual patterns over time, even having that basic understanding starts people, like it helps people to start shifting, making shifts. And I even had somebody in our membership last night. We were running a masterclass for our Mind Masters membership. And, you know, she's only been to, I think we've only had 3 masterclasses. And she said, Beck, even in this short time that we've been doing this together, I'm starting to respond differently. I'm starting to make different choices. I understand that when I react that way, this is what's happening in my brain. So I know that sort of goes off the topic of neuroscience a little bit, but it's about keeping it simple so that we can all understand it. We don't need a degree to understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about this podcast is when because I handpick the people that I interview. There is something that ignites in me, and I go, I need to talk to this person. And what happens is I ask a question, and then as part of your answer, I start downloading, like, you know, all these different questions. So I'll try and get to all of them, but I you know, like my brain just goes, oh, so many things.
I know, we could talk for hours, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many ways, you know, we're going to divert and then come back. And so you know, I don't mind that at all, but I feel like people who and I've had anxiety and depression and still have moments where I'm anxious, but what I find is there are a lot of people in our society at the moment who are very anxious and depressed, and they don't have the tools. They're trying some things. They might meditate occasionally. They might focus on their breath, but that's a bit band-aidy because you're not actually changing the programs. They're not going deep enough into that understanding to change the behavior. And so I feel like at the moment, and I'm interested in your perception about this. Do you feel like there's a lot of practitioners, and I'll use that in inverted commas, practitioners out there who are facilitating, but they are just encouraging not on purpose, but with their own ability, if you will, but they're encouraging people to just stay on that super like almost like a superficial resolution rather than helping them, because they don't have the tools themselves as practitioners. They're not pulling them down deep enough to do that rewiring. Is that something that you're noticing as well?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question and a huge question. There's so many things in there. Yeah, look, in my experience, because, you know, I had looked for help, solutions, whatever word you want to use, for years and years and years. I didn't just sit by thinking, oh, this is it. And what you're talking about, that's what I found, is that I just kept going over the same things over and over again. And like you use the word band-aids. Now, you know, the types of things that you were talking about, breathing, breath work, meditation, and lots of those other things, they're all part of what we introduce our clients to, because they work. They're ancient techniques and there's a reason they work. But you're right, there's more than that, because we need to then, like, that helps us get into the state where we can be open and start understanding. But then we need to go in and find the root cause, because you're right, there is a lot of anxiety out there. There is a lot of depression out there. You know, life, I don't like to say that life is hard, but there's a lot of tough things, you know, crap things happen in the world, and none of us are immune to that. And I think that's a really important point to make there too, Maryanne, is that I'm quite open in saying that I have eliminated depression and anxiety from my life, chronic anxiety. But I too have my moments where I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? You know, I can have down days where I don't want to get off the couch because I'm still human, you know, but it's about being able to come out of those without, you know, getting stuck, and also understanding, okay, what are the things that I can do to move forward? So I guess going back to your other question, are there a lot of practitioners, experts, whatever you want to call them, out there who are just skimming over the top? Yeah, I think there are, but I think everybody has their place. You know, there's not enough people out there helping those who actually need it. You know, wait times are huge. Don't even get me started on, you know, the amount of people who are on medication unnecessarily. I'm not anti-medication. I've been on it myself. There is a time and a place for it, but it's not a solution. So yeah, that's why when I found NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and I realized that it was actually doing something as opposed to just me reliving the trauma over and over again of telling my story, that's when I went, this works. It's logical to me. And that's why I do what I do now. Yeah.
You are definitely way more compassionate than I am, because my opinion about that side of things is a lot more severe. I can tell you. I because I've worked with some really great practitioners. I was a practitioner, and I know um I know what's shenanigans and what isn't. And I feel like there are some practitioners out there who are in order for them to keep having their clientele, they keep them in a state where they just keep excavating and excavating and excavating all of their junk, but it goes nowhere. And that's
Yeah.
why I really love kinesiology and NLP, because it is about rewiring the brain to think completely different things. With kinesiology, you're
Yeah.
working with the subconscious brain. Same with NLP.
Yeah.
You're working with the
Yeah.
subconscious brain so that your body actually responds completely differently to the things that might have been triggering you before. And it's not, you don't have to keep digging things up. I spent,
Yeah.
and I've said this many times on the podcast, I've spent more years than I probably should have in that excavation, because I'd been working with therapists who were just keeping me in that state of, oh, this happened to you. And so then that becomes your identity and story. And it's like, actually, no, I'm there's no more excavating. That doesn't mean that I'm not evolving and I'm not working on my self-awareness or anything like that. But I think there are people who are actively there to help you transform that. Like you said, the tools of meditation and cacao even, and breath work, ice baths, all of those things, like so good. Yin yoga, love it. All of those things
Yes.
are exceptional tools, but they go with the reprogramming. And
Yes.
I feel
Yes.
like,
Exactly.
yeah, and I feel like true transformation has to happen with both, not one or the other.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that they're tools that help you open up so that you can surrender to the rewiring, so that your brain can relax enough for that surrender and that transformation. And so my question to you is, what does it really mean to retrain your brain?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? Well, I guess to explain it simply, you know, everything that we do from the moment that we're born, it becomes a strategy, right? So everything that we do is a strategy. Think about, you know, breathing. We don't think about breathing. That's a strategy. We don't think about walking. That is a strategy. And so everything becomes a habitual pattern, if you will. You know, think about something as simple as learning to tie your shoe. All right. So when you're a kid, when I've pictured this, I always picture me tying some desert boots because they were my favorite shoes when I was a kid. So
That's taking
I've
me
got my
back.
desert boot. I know, right?
That's reminding me of high school. I forgot about desert boots.
Yeah. So you don't know how to tie your shoes yet. You're a kid. And so a parent or older brother or sister, whatever, they show you how to tie your shoes so you can see what the outcome is. You can see that there's two loops. And then they teach you this strategy. They're like, okay, you know, this one goes over that one, and then something about a bunny runs around a tree and creates a loop and pull tight. And you do it the first time, and you know it doesn't work, the knot doesn't work, and you try it again and again and again because you know what the outcome is that you're trying to get to. And eventually, if you do it enough, you create this neural pathway in your brain that gets you to the outcome. So, you know, we think when we hear oh, brain retraining, or, as I'm called, the brain changer, we're like, oh, that must be really hard. But in fact, you've been doing it every day of your life. You're really, really good at it already. You just need to realize that that's what you've been doing, and then use this thing that you're already really good at to create whatever outcome it is that you want. So it's like recoding the computer. I don't speak computer, I don't speak code, but that's essentially what we're doing, is we're changing the code in the background in our brain to achieve the outcome that it is we want to achieve. So that's what retraining your brain is in really simple terms.
And so with the retraining of your brain, what kind of transformations do you see for people who haven't tried NLP or kinesiology or any work like that? What could they expect?
Yeah, look, it could be anything. There's people in the world who, perhaps like me, they're like, I'm in a bad place, I've got severe depression, I've got severe anxiety, whatever that might be, and they need a complete transformation. It's like life is not good as it is. And so we're looking to create a life that they actually want. This is the thing, Maryanne, and I'm sure you'd be very aware of this, especially from a kinesiology point of view. It's not enough to know what you don't want. You need to know what it is that you do want.
Yes.
Right. And when you ask that question, I often see, I get that response, and I get it. It's a big question. And so we would guide people through to get to that. But it's not just for people who want massive transformation in their life. It's for people who might just want to tweak things. Life is pretty good, but, perhaps there's a goal that I've been, wanting to achieve, and I just never seem to quite get there. Or every time this thing happens, I tend to shy away from it, or I get this reaction that I don't want. So it's about retraining them, helping them understand what that is and why it's happening, and retraining them. And it could be something like a phobia as well. How many people do you know that are scared of heights or scared of flying? The amount of people that have come to me with a fear of flying in the last 12 months I can't believe it. It's incredible. And so we can help them retrain their brain so that flying is piece cake. That's the power of it.
And I love that you were saying people get stuck when you ask them what they want. Everybody knows, life gives you contrast, right? So when you're feeling good, you might experience some things that are not so great. When things are not so great, you're feeling things that are good. That the contrast is there so that you do know what you do want and what you don't want. But it is very easy to fall in a cycle where you're focusing on what you don't want, what you don't want, what you don't want, what you don't want. And when you look at manifesting and that side of things, a law of attraction, philosophy is get out of that mindset. Stop focusing on what you don't want, because you're just attracting more of the same. Start focusing on what you do want. But a lot of people don't actually know what they want. They haven't spent enough time letting themselves dream about what they want. They're stuck in cycles of fear where they are almost paralyzed in the what they don't want, that they haven't even let themselves expand into what they do want. And I noticed that too when I was treating clients. It is and even working with the corporates now, it is easy, so easy. They could banter on for hours about all the problems, but when I say what does the utopia look like, they go into that.
I haven't thought about that.
Well,
what do you mean?
I mean, or they'll give me like a really light-hearted answer, and I go, no, let's go deeper. What does it feel like? What's the communication like? What's the energy like? What are you experiencing? How does it feel in your body? What does the environment feel like? And so I would imagine that is what you're taking your clients through as well, like opening them up and opening and rewiring their brain and their neural pathways, just even in that conversation that happens where you're like, actually, have you seen all of this? You know, have you
Yeah.
thought about any of these things? What if you did? What would it feel like? And that there's such a powerful way to transform. I don't know about you, but that's one of the things that I love the most about that kind of work. It is really exciting because you start seeing the literal light bulbs start to go off, and people become conscious. But right now in our society, everyone is numbing themselves out. I was talking to a guy that I work with, and he and I were both saying there seems to be two layers of people at the moment. People who are active in taking responsibility for their well-being, the way that their brain works, changing and transforming. But because of that, there's a heightened sensitivity that comes because you're paying attention. You're seeing real impacts, and you're feeling the energy that's around. It is heavy. And then you've got people who are numbing themselves out, whether it's alcohol, drugs, food, relationships, TV, internet, whatever it is, scrolling for hours on the phone. And they seem to be just plodding along. They seem fine to the untrained eye. Those people look like they're fine. But
are they?
But are they? And eventually they're going to hit a wall that is so hard and so severe that it's a bit frightening that's as a collective, like we're going to see a hard hit. And I'm curious to understand your perspective about that. Are you seeing it that way as well?
Yeah, look, so many things that you're saying there. I'm just, I've got lots dropping in there as well. And I love that light bulb comment. This lady that I was talking about in the masterclass last night, she literally said that when we were talking about something. She's like, it's like I just had a light bulb moment go off, and she explained it. And I love that because, Maryanne, I'm sure you'll agree with me here. Majority of people are asleep.
Yeah.
We are going through life with our eyes closed, whether it's what we choose to do or whether we just simply don't know any different. And I think that's a big part of it, right? Yeah. But we're asleep. And this is what we're trying to do, is wake people up, help people realize that there is a different way of doing things, of thinking things. We can actually take control of our mind. But, there's a reason that this is happening. You said something before, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it just reminded me of the different layers of our brain. So there's a reason that that we stay comfortable, that we stay in our comfort zone. Everybody's heard the comfort zone. And that is because our brain is actually hardwired to keep us there. If you go back to the beginning of time, that's the primal part of our brain. It's literally trying to keep us alive. It's trying to help us survive, because that's its job. That's our basic job in life, is to stay alive. And these days, we don't walk outside our front door and, we're faced with a saber-toothed tiger or another clan or something who's going to kill us. But that translates into keeping us safe. So not doing things that maybe we might be embarrassed by, or there's some sort of fear around it. And there's anybody who's listening who's familiar with Mel Robbins, and she's got her 3-second rule. This is kind of what we're talking about, right? Because we really want to bypass our critical conscious mind and get into that unconscious, or subconscious, as you also called it, and make the changes there, because that's where all that fear is stored. And our conscious mind is what brings up the fear. But let's just say we're at a wedding, right? Everybody knows that they're dancing at a wedding, and you're sitting at your table and your favorite song comes on. Like for me, at a gig like that, it's Michael Jackson, for example. I'm like, yeah, I want to dance to this. Cool, I'm going to have so much fun. And so if I jump up straight away and I'm on the dance floor and I'm just dancing, that's great. I haven't let anything get in my way. But if you wait even 3 seconds, and this is where Mel Robbins' 3-second rule comes in. If you wait even just 3 seconds, your conscious mind, which is actually only a small portion of your mind, only about 5%, it's that critical conscious mind that jumps in and goes, but Beck, what if you get up there and you're the only person? Everyone's going to be looking at you. You're going to look like an idiot. What if nobody likes the way that you dance? And so I just stay in my seat and I go, no, you go. I'm not going to get up there. And so this is actually what's happening, but that's just one example. This happens in our life every single day, which is why so many of us are just living, we're just existing, really.
Yeah.
We might have some fun things that we do on the weekend, but is this really what you envisaged for your life when you were a kid and your parents told you that you could do or be anything? And I guess this is where it comes to for me, Maryanne. I don't want an ordinary life. I want an extraordinary life. And it's taken me a while to get to where I am. And I've still got a long, long way to go, but I'm not even middle-aged yet. And I'm in my mid-40s. So that tells you what age I'm gunning for.
Me too. I feel the same way. I feel like the best years are yet to come. I think I've been through the hardest part in a chunk, and now it's, you know, and I agree with you. There is opportunity for us to get more delusional, you know, and I it's my favorite thing to say at the moment. Just get more delusional. Let yourself pretend, if you will, right? Because that's a really great way to start engaging your imagination and start changing the neural pathways about what's possible. Just be delusional. Just think about.
And your thoughts create reality, right?
That's right.
So imagine what could happen.
Exactly. And so but even that is challenging because, again, you've got your current reality versus what you're envisioning, and bringing those two together and trusting the trust that comes, and then that fights against the anxiety. And then when you start feeling like, well, but my current reality, and this is how like those beautiful loops start happening. You go, all right, I'll allow myself to have the vision. And then, but then you've got the contrast of the now. So then the now creates a bit of anxiety because it does feel like things can be hot on your heels. When you look at even, you know, in the immediate, when you start looking at interest rates and cost of living and all of those stresses that are increasing. And so all of that starts bubbling up. Then you look at even sort of further out, when you look at, we're on the brink of World War III, you know, then that starts looming. So like, what about that? And so so the anxiety is like starting to bubble. And then you look at the actions that you might have to take to fulfill your vision and working towards that. And so then if that starts to feel too hard, and then all of a sudden you find yourself caught in this, you're now like forming into a little bit of a loop of depression because it's all too hard. Oh, that feels too hard. What's the point? I'm never going, it's too far away. It's too hard. Who am I? All of those things. And then all of that starts coming to the surface. And before you know it, you're in that stuck mode. And that's why the rewiring is so critical, because if you let it, and this is what you were saying at the beginning of our conversation, if you let it, you can stay stuck in that loop, and it'll swirl between depression and anxiety, and you might simmer it down a little bit, but then it starts up again. And the longer you leave it, the more intense it becomes, because you're getting used to it. And that's why that Mel Robbins 3-second rule is so good, because it is an opportunity to challenge yourself out of that space. And the more time people can spend thinking about the way that their brain works and allowing themselves to dream of something else, but also having an understanding that shit is going to come from being delusional. Shit will activate and trigger, but you need the tools to support that. You can't have one without the other.
But this is a question I would ask in response to that, which it's a great point to make, is that how much is this hurting you? How much is this spiral of depression or anxiety or whatever it is for you? How much is it hurting you? Because this is what I hear a lot. People say to me, but I don't want to go there. I don't want to go to that thing that I know is going to trigger me. And NLP is different to other methodologies. We don't go and put you back in that particular situation and say, relive it, feel it. I mean, we ask you, we need you to revisit that in a different way to take a different perspective, but we're not re-traumatizing you. It's not what we're about.
Yep.
And so it's about, if you say, but triggering that thing and thinking about that again is going to hurt me and I don't want to feel that way again, I'm going to ask, how long have you felt this way? Now, a common answer to that is, for as long as I can remember, I've had this problem or this issue. Okay, so if we go and we visit that, whatever that thing is that's making you uncomfortable, it's going to make you uncomfortable for a little while, but then we can actually push through it, look at it from a different perspective, reframe it. As a big part of NLP is reframe it, and we'll get you onto the other side, and then you'll be able to move forward, whatever the terminology is that you want. So you've got years of feeling like shit here. And then you've got a small little, it might be a day, it might be a couple of weeks, or it might even be a couple of months, who knows? But what's better? Would you prefer to feel that pain just for a couple of months or weeks, or do you want to go on and live the next 40 years of your life like this?
Absolutely.
Now, I don't know about you, Maryanne, and I put it into that context. I go, pun intended, that's a no-brainer.
Oh, it is. I mean, what choice do you, well, I mean, you do have a choice, but I know what I would be choosing. You know,
and that's it. That's
you
the
know,
word, isn't it? Choice.
And I think some of it, and I'm interested in your perspective about this, I think some of it comes with being disciplined and challenging yourself to get to know more about the way that your brain works, like being curious. I don't think enough people are curious about themselves. And I think there's a lot of egoic behavior where there's a lot of attention on themselves, but they're not curious. So again, it's that superficial layer that, you know, if they look good, if they dress, you know, the right way, and they, you know, they look super fit, you know, the perception is everything is fine, but what is happening underneath there? And I think that is a real, like, it makes me sad that people are not curious. So I know when I'm like networking, or, you know, if I'm in group scenarios, I am a very curious person. I have this podcast for that reason, because I can ask a lot of questions, and people know that I'm going to be asking questions, but I do that externally as well, like when I'm socializing. And some people, you can see some people are like a bit taken aback, and I'm not, you know, definitely not being rude, but I'm genuinely interested in them. But because they're not interested in themselves, it is confronting. And I feel so sad when I see people in that mode. But that is where that curiosity is, where it's not about excavating the trauma, but it is trying to understand what is standing in your way so that you're in your full expression and in your full freedom. And that's one of the things that I love about NLP, because you're helping people step right into that space.
Yeah, curiosity, absolutely, 100%. I mean, that's what I've always been, that curious person, you know, even before I even knew what NLP was and how it worked. You know, I've always been in those roles at work where I'm networking, right? I love networking. I say that to people and they're like, you're a freak. I love meeting people and talking to them. And I naturally ask a lot of questions. And it's because I'm genuinely interested. And one of my favorite things is when people go, oh, no one's ever asked me that before. That's a good question, because it gets them ticking. And, you know, you're so right. We don't spend enough time asking ourselves questions. But I would ask, why is that? And one of the answers that I come up with that is, we're not taught how to do that, Maryanne. You know, as you well know, you know, majority of our beliefs, our values, all of these patterns and strategies that we were talking about, they're formed at a very young age. And we're not taught this, and it's not about blame here. It's not about blaming our parents or whoever brought us up. They were doing the best that they could with the information and knowledge and experience that they had, as were their parents and their parents. So all we can do is take it upon ourselves. You know, this is the whole living at cause or living in effect. We either take responsibility of who we are and what we're able to do and the way that we choose to look at the world, or we can blame it on external circumstances. You know, well, yeah, okay, the world's at war, that's why. Or I don't have a degree, that's why I can't earn more money. Or, you know, it's his fault or her fault because that's the way that they are. I call bullshit on that. You know, it's about taking responsibility, but I also have compassion around that. And I would ask the question, what happened to you to make you this way? You know, and, you know, a lot of people will have an idea, they'll know, but they don't want to go there, like you said, because they're scared. They have this fear that the dam is going to break. And once the dam breaks, they can't pull it all back in. But I would suggest that once the dam breaks, that is the beginning. That is when you can actually make the change, make the difference. You can finally let it go and release it and then start rebuilding the banks of the dam.
Absolutely. I feel like people have an aversion to being seen, right? So I think part of it is, if I let this go, then I am going to have to be in my full expression. I have to then accept and embody the truth of who I am. But what about if that's not accepted? And one of my innate gifts and abilities is seeing others in their entirety more than they see themselves. And I love that. It is such a beautiful gift to have. When I was going through all the unhealed stages of my life, I was attracting toxic men, but because I could see the really what their potential, if you will, I would stay in there unnecessarily. That's not the cycle that I'm in now, but it's something that's always been there. But I can see it is very challenging for people to feel seen, and I think that's another reason why people are it's not just the fear of letting the dam go, but it's the fear of what life will look like then, and what that might mean, what else they're going to have to do, what else they're going to have to step into, what else they're going to be challenged by. And because it's not like known terrain, that in itself keeps people in that cycle of just, I can't do it. I'm not ready to do it. I don't want to. I don't know what's there.
That's that what if question, right? Like, well, what if I, you know, let's take relationships, for example. What if I leave this relation? Like, you know, it's okay. You know, I don't, you know, I think there's a lot of people who could identify with being in a relationship where it's okay, right?
I think
and you go, it's okay. Sorry?
I would say that that's 95% of the relationships that exist currently.
It would be a lot. And I'm familiar with it as well. Not now, in my past.
For sure.
And so we can go with that whole, look, it's okay. I've got a partner, you know, I've got somebody to go home to at the end of the day. You know, are we in love? Maybe not, but we care for each other. And then we go, what if I break up with that person and I never find someone else? And I remember thinking that when I broke up with my ex, I was like, holy crap. Well, actually before, because I was thinking, I need to end this relationship. Something was telling me I need to end this relationship for, I don't know, years, right? But one of the things that stopped me was fear, right? I now know that it was full-blown fear, because I was thinking, what if I'm alone for the rest of my life? What if I never meet somebody that I can have kids with? I was in my mid-30s at the time. You know, I want kids. I want that person at home. I want to create this life with them. And so I didn't do the thing that I knew that I needed to do. And as a result of not doing that, a lot of bad things happened. And part of the reason why I am where I am now, because I hit bottom and I've had to pull myself up. Now, if you look at my life now, no, I'm not married. I haven't had a lot of relationships since then. And I don't have kids, and I have no plans on having kids now. And I would not change a thing. I love it. I love my life. So, yeah, that fear that held me back at the beginning, and so I didn't make that decision at the time. We go, what if I can't find this? But my question is, yeah, but what if it's better? What if it's better? Because I can tell you, even if I'm on my own, I don't have children, I have fur children, my life is 300% better, if that's possible, than what it was when I was in that relationship.
Yeah. Again, it's the
What if.
yeah, it's the fear of the unknown that keeps people stuck. And it's the anxiety that comes with all of that fear that we're seeing everywhere. And we're seeing people overreact. We're seeing people project, in workplaces as well. Like it is, people are like, I'll even just like basic things. Like I'm just gobsmacked. I went to go to a shopping center and I was driving. All right. I drive my car like a little go-kart, but I stopped at the crossing. Like I wasn't speeding, but it was probably a little faster and a bit more of a halt at the crossing. But there was plenty. There was no way that I was ever going to hit anyone or anything like that. But this lady who wasn't even at the crossing, I could see her coming towards the crossing, which is why I stopped. But as she's crossing, she looks at me and shakes her head. And it's like, my window was like down. And I was like, I don't think shaking your head is necessary for this. Like, I just I couldn't even help it. I'm just like, why? If this is like an issue, this basic thing where you weren't even in danger, imagine what else these people are stressing about. And people are carrying the anxiety, their trauma, their depression, and they're bringing it wherever they go, whether it's networking, whether it's in their relationships, whether it's in their family dynamics, whether it's in the workplace. It is they're spewing that energy wherever they are, and it's making it challenging, very challenging to participate in that way. And it's interesting that you say that you love networking, because for me, I have a love-hate relationship with it. And actually, Ashley, who you're working with and who's a good friend of mine, she's coming onto the show for us to talk about networking, because we met through networking. And so we've got a lot of interesting thoughts about that. But I find it challenging because there is a lot of unhealed in those scenarios. So people are focused on what they can get rather than what they can give. And so just coming off that now, coming back to the anxiety point, when you're in that heightened anxiety, when you're feeling that at an all-time high, which most people are, what's the best thing they can do to interrupt that pattern? In your opinion, like when they're spiraling, what can they do to hijack it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I get asked that a lot. And there's the single most and the easiest thing that you can do is to breathe, right? Now, I know that a lot of your audience are going to be going, seriously, I've listened all the way through this podcast and all you're doing is telling me to breathe. But there's a reason I say that, is because we are very stressed out breathers. You were just talking about that. You're talking about anxiety, and anxiety is not the problem. Anxiety is a symptom. Okay, it's like I've got a headache. Well, where is that headache coming from? What is causing it? Is it a hormonal headache? Is my neck out? Did I bang my head? Like something caused the headache. There's a root cause. Now, I can take a Panadol or something and it's going to mask that. It's going to put a Band-Aid over it, but it's not going to fix the problem, right? Anxiety is the same. It's the symptom. We need to find the root cause. And when we're in this spiral, when we're feeling a bit out of control, the best thing you can do is stop, because you're probably racing, is stop and re-engage your parasympathetic nervous system. Because what's happening is and you will know this so well from your kinesiology background, right? So you're existing in your sympathetic nervous system, and the sympathetic nervous system is essentially your fight, flight, freeze system. So you're in survival mode. And, you know, for me, that feels like there's rubber bands going off in my body. I can't stick to one thing. I'm moving quickly. My heart is racing. And so what we want to do is we want to invite the body to just slow down. We want the heart rate to come down. We want the body to relax. And the best way to do that is some simple deep breathing. And I just suggest the box breathing mechanism because it's easy, right? Everyone knows how to do it. And if you've never heard of it, it's like imagining a box with 4 sides, and you breathe in for the count of 4, hold it for the count of 4, exhale for the count of 4, and hold it for the count of 4. And you're counting in your head. And so your head has something to do, like your brain has something to do now, right? It has to focus on the numbers while your body is inviting itself to just calm down. So there's so many things, you know, if you want to get out of this spiral pattern, first of all, you need to realize that you've got a pattern. So it's awareness, right? So you've got to wake up. And then, you know, you need to ask yourself questions. We've talked a lot about asking questions. We need to find out, well, what triggers this pattern? What actually happens? Where do I feel it in my body? What do I say to myself? And then we've got to take some steps to reframe that. I talked about reframing before. You know, let's reframe it from the negative to the positive. If I wasn't thinking this, or if I wasn't feeling this, what would I think or feel instead of this? But then it does take practice as well. You know, I started learning French recently. I did it at school, but I started going to French classes, and there was only 10. It was at the WEA. Now, I actually only went to about 4 of them because it just happened to be a super busy time in my life. Now, can I speak French because I went 4 times? No, I can't. And I didn't practice it throughout the lessons either. So I do not speak French for fun and travel just yet because I didn't practice it. It's no different to anything else that we do. So if you're in that situation, by all means, breathe. But then if you need help, you know, you can do this yourself. As you know, Maryanne, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts, you can go to seminars, you can make the changes yourself, but it will take a long time. Or you can see someone like me or like you, and you can make these changes, these transformations very quickly.
Yes, you can. And the change is immediate. That's what I love about it. But it is in those moments, like I was in the car the other day and I was box breathing because I was like, well, let's just, you know, I had noticed earlier in my day that I was walking really fast on my morning walk and I wasn't breathing properly. And I was like, why? First of all, why am I even rushing? I'm going to do the steps. So this doesn't need to be like, I don't need to do this high intensity. First of all, I'm not even taking in the scenery properly like this. And how about we breathe? So later in the day when I was in the car, I was like, let's do some box breathing. And even that felt challenging. Like it felt like I was like efforting to do the box breathing. And I was like, oh my God, like this is that basic 101 behavior. Like so what else is it? And so a technique that I find really helpful when I'm feeling anxious or if I'm worried about something is, and even when I'm feeling good and I'm setting a new goal, is to ask myself why. And I ask myself why 7 times. So why am I feeling fearful? Why? And so, but why is that worrying me? Okay, but why is that worrying me? Why is that worrying me? And so you go all the way down the funnel. Why? And then the answer that comes out is quite shocking usually. You're like, oh, I didn't even know that that was bothering me. And same when you're goal setting. Why do you want this? Why do you want that house, or, why do you want to go on that trip, or why do you want to be successful in that way? Why? And then why to that, why to that, why to that 7 times. And
Okay.
that helps you come into another awareness, because then you're like, okay, so that is what is sitting deeper in those layers than just this initial anxiety. This, say it's like finances. Most people at the moment are stressing about that. So let's say I'm worried, I'm not going to have enough. But what is it about that is making you fearful? And then you go down and
And
down and
that's
down.
actually, that's a better question, isn't it? What is it specifically?
Yeah.
Because
So
when we ask ourselves why,
yeah,
often we go, I don't know why.
yeah.
So I love your question of what.
Yeah. And it's like, well, I might not be able to pay my mortgage. Okay. So why is that stressing you out? But often it's failure, shame, other people's judgment. It might be survival, all these different things. But ultimately, what comes out is something that you like I said, you just typically wouldn't even expect. And so I love that. And I encourage our audience today to work with the box breathing, but also challenge yourself with the 7 whys. Why? And just get a pen and paper and just see what comes, and don't judge it. Just, and if you don't feel like you've got there after 7, keep going. I've done ones that I went to like 23 to get to the bottom of it, because because of my training and the different therapies and the things that I've learned, my brain is very tricky. I can hide it in all sorts of different things and stay on that superficial. I can give, like, I know the answers to give. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes it's taken me 23 whys to go, oh shit, now I'm really facing it.
And ask yourself the final question, when you say, oh, my brain is really tricky,
Yeah.
I can tell you whatever you want to know. And, a lot of us as practitioners, we know how to work the system up here, right? But for what purpose?
Yeah.
And that is one of my favorite questions. And, you were talking about being seen, whether we even want to be seen ourselves. And, I had an experience myself just a couple of weeks ago where I remember I said to someone, and I was in this beautiful, safe space, group of women who we've all connected recently. It's quite incredible. And I've never really felt anything quite like it. But I remember saying to one of the women there, I want to be seen, but I don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
Like, it's about being vulnerable as well. It's probably the most vulnerable in that conversation that I've ever been in my life, so and I tell you and your audience that because it's not a one and done. This is a lifelong, and I'm not a fan of the word journey, but it just fits, but it's a lifelong journey, right? Growth is a lifelong thing. We don't fix one thing. In fact, we don't fix anything. We're not broken, but we don't address one thing and go, oh, that solved all the problems. Most likely it's brought up more questions, and it's like, oh crap, like seriously, do I have to do this again and again and again? That's why you get to 23 questions, right? But that is the point, and it can open up some quite incredible doors. So I would I challenge your listeners to, it's not even just about asking questions, it's about asking better questions.
Yes, better questions. And with growth comes the ebb and flow, right? So to move forward, for the will to move forward, it has to go down to come back up. And so that's part of the transformation, right? And sometimes it's, simple. And sometimes when you're asking for big transformation, when you're saying, when you finally surrender and say, I want to be seen, right? Beck, you will, I want to be seen. I want all of these things. That's a big ask. That's a big out there, right? And so then as part of that transformation, things have to fall away for you to embody that. And if you mean it with so much intent, the universe goes, all right, let's do it then. Oh, she's given us the green light. Yeehaw. Let's do this.
Yeah.
But then right?
Yep.
You come all the way down, and it's a contraction. And so that's what, when we talk about transformation, like you're in the cocoon and you're trying to break out of that cocoon, that period of time, which is the bottom of the wheel, feels like shit. And sometimes that can be, you can be in that space for quite a while. And even with some of the tools, sometimes you're just meant to be there because that's where the learning is. But sometimes there is ways of working with practitioners like yourself. It just helps to ease some of that stickiness. It might not, it may not necessarily speed things up, but it might just lighten the load. And I'm curious to know, from your perspective, do you notice that cycle with the entrepreneurs that you work with? Because obviously, as entrepreneurs, they have a vision about what they're trying to create and what their mission is. And if you're working with heart-led entrepreneurs like myself, their purpose is beyond, it's not about them. It is about being of service, which I love so much. But I'd like to know, are you noticing that theme with them?
Yeah, 100%. And isn't it funny, as you're talking about that, I'm just getting this incredible feeling in my heart space at the moment. I don't know what it is, but there's something sitting right there. And yeah, that, I think you've hit on a really important point there, Maryanne, and that is that, I think we said this at the beginning, it's never going to be like all sunshine, rainbows and unicorns all of the time. That's not life, right? Life is like a roller coaster, and anyone who thinks that, or even comes and does the work, like and works with me, does coaching with me, for example, and thinks that they're going to walk out on cloud 9 and it's going to be like that for the rest of their life, they're kidding themselves. And I'm going to tell them as much as that. But what happens is that when you are in that space, as we all will be at some point in time, for me, I have this faith. And I'm not talking about a religious faith. I just have this faith that I will get through it. That yes, this might be a hard slog. I might be at the bottom of the wheel, as you suggested. But I just have this innate faith in me that I will get through. And I see that a lot with other entrepreneurs as well. And the biggest part of this, one of the most important parts of this that I have learned is that at those times you need a community, and we were talking about that at the beginning. We need a community. So many of us are disconnected these days. Now, we might physically be surrounded by people in a workplace or in a house with our family, but are we really feeling that connection? I know, because I've experienced it, I can walk into a room full of people and still feel lonely.
Yeah.
Because at that particular time, I'm not connecting with people. And so when we feel like this, it is about finding the right people and I think being open about what we need from them. I often say to that, if a friend calls me, and they're not feeling so good and they've got a problem, I'm like, okay, do you want friend Beck or do you want coach Beck? If they say I want coach Beck, I'm like, okay, well, I might help coach them through the problem. But if they say I just want friend Beck, I'll be like, yeah, this is shit. Isn't it horrible when I'm right there in the hole with them. But we get better at this.
Yeah.
Okay, so even I mentioned those days that I might have on the couch, or if I don't want to get out of bed, they're rare. But I am so much kinder to myself. Again, another one of these buzzwords or cliches that's been thrown around, but it's so true. I will take that time and I'll be like, you know what? This is what my body needs. It's what my mind needs. I'm going to sit on this couch. I'm going to watch trashy TV. And I'm okay with that, because it's going to help me get, bring the wheel back up, so to speak. So yes, I do notice it a lot. And I believe that you need to surround yourself with the right people who can support you. That's what I'm loving about our Mind Masters program. People are actually saying that. They're like, it's so nice to be in a space where I'm not the only one thinking this. You know,
Yeah.
I thought I was the only one that had these thoughts. I thought I was the only one feeling this way. And they're realizing that they're not. And as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's like, oh, I thought I was the only one with this problem. No, we've all been through this. Great. Either get in the hole with me and just be here with me for a while, or help me get out of it, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's even just having someone to talk to, or even just being around other people who might be feeling the same way, but also who might have experienced it at one point or another. And
Yeah.
if you're in the entrepreneurial space, we're challenging ourselves to be better and better and better and better. So that will cycle happens quite regularly. And it is
Sometimes it can happen in a day.
multiple times in a day. You know, you
Yeah.
start to feel
Yeah.
like, you know, you've got multiple personalities, because one minute you're like flying high and then you're crashing back down again, you know, and you're like, I feel like I'm losing it, but you're not. It is
Yeah.
it is part of the surrender and the growth. But being around a community of people who understand, and I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this. And we were saying this before we started recording. Your family and your friends and your partner, it's not their job to support you in that way, and they don't understand. They might not even want to, for crying out loud. But having a community of people, whether it's one-on-one coaching or group coaching or anything like that, even networking, maybe networking less. I'm a bit I don't feel like you get that so much from the networking, but in that coaching space, in those group coaching, I feel like there is a lot of support that you get. It's like a camaraderie that people are walking that
Yeah.
path with you, so that you don't feel like it is just you've got no one to talk to. And
Yeah.
that they are able to support you without the emotion. They're not emotionally attached. They don't have their own agendas. You're not triggering them. You know, family. I was talking to my cousin yesterday, and you know that I was saying your growth. You know, you actively trigger the fuck out of the people around you. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we just do, because we're transforming and changing, and we're choosing to. So you're not necessarily, it doesn't mean your family and your friends don't love and they're not cheering you on, but they can't do that in the same way that you would get with other entrepreneurs and other people experiencing the same thing as you. And I think that relates to people and other groups as well, like uh, you know, other communities that are, you know, like grief counseling and addiction counseling and all of those things. Like it's a different dynamic, and there's a different connection that comes with that kind of support. Would you agree that that is like an essential part of being an entrepreneur, and that there's not enough weight and conversation about how critical it is to be a part of a group like that?
I agree that it is absolutely critical to have that support network. You know, entrepreneurs in general, yes, but you know, I always say about coaches, coaches need coaches, right? We
Yes.
need people. We still have issues. We still have questions, you know, and also as coaches, we hear a lot from people, and it's not about, you know, it's all private, confidential, doesn't leave the room, so to speak, but we've got to deal with what comes from that as well. And you know, we're talking about heart-led, so I know a lot of the people, the entrepreneurs that you interview and you work with, they're in this heart space. Okay, so it's holistic, whatever they're doing. So yes, I 100% agree that we need these communities. It's important. It's an important distinction for me to say it's not about finding that community where we're all like, oh yeah, gosh, isn't this hard? Isn't this shit? Like, it's not that kind of community, as I'm sure you will 100% agree. It's about, like you said, supporting, lifting people up, um, cheering them on. You know, there's a couple of people in the communities that we're part of that are all about, I'm your cheerleader, like I'm here, woohoo, I've got your back, so to speak. But you've got to find your people, and it might take a little while. You might go from this community to that one, you know, that maybe that's not quite right, or there's a few people from that one, and create another one. And eventually you've got to find that right fit. And you know, you're all about energy, right? And so am I. You've got to figure out what works. You've
Yeah.
got to find that right fit. You've got to be comfortable with that energy. And if the first one's not right, move on.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm 100% agreement with that.
Yeah, I just when I look back at my journey as an entrepreneur, for the majority of my career, I've worked for myself now. That hasn't obviously always been the case, but it is now that I'm nearly 48. But I just don't think that there is enough conversation about how necessary being coached is. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs sort of flail about out there, and it is sad, because as especially heart-led entrepreneurs, their mission and their vision is obviously greater than them, but because it's so big, sometimes it feels overwhelming. And so how are you, how are you managing through that overwhelm? Who are you talking to about that? How are you supporting yourself, and are you even giving yourself permission to receive that support? And I think that's the key. Are you even letting yourself fucking receive it? Like, why are you, this is a gift. And you're right, not all groups what you need, and you might not get everything, but I think you need to really think about, if you are going to let yourself receive it. And this is something that I've been really contemplating. I'm very spiritually inclined, and I like mixing the spiritual with the business aspect. But I am this sounds bad, but I'll say it. I'm like a spiritual snob, right? My level, the quality of the spiritual content and the depths that I expect from a group like that is rare, right? Because I've been in that space so long, I know what's good and what's not good. And so I'll get frustrated if people are playing, like I went to a group thing, and it was like I was like a university student and they were kinder kids, and not in an egoic kind of way, but just from experience, and everyone's on their own journey, and there's definitely no judgment. A little bit of judgment. No judgment. But but sometimes I think to myself, do I really need the spiritual, if what I really need is the business support? Like, do I really need it to be there? Could I just accept and receive just the technical business aspect? Could I give myself permission to not have that and find that somewhere else, and vice versa? And so I think a lot of people in this heart-led space might be in a little bit of that conflict. Like, I don't want to detract from the spiritual side of things, but I need the business side of things. And sometimes they're getting too much of the business side of things and not enough of the spiritual things. And I'm curious, do you find that the entrepreneurs that you work with and that you coach, do you find that it is easy to bring those aspects together, or you kind of separate that out?
I separate that out, or do I bring it together? With the way that I see coaching working is that, I don't class myself as a business coach. I don't even class myself as a life coach. As like, just the term doesn't mean much to me. But what I do find is, no matter what area of someone's life I'm coaching them through, because I'm just the vehicle, right? I'm just the facilitator. I'm there to ask questions and to guide you. No matter what area of life we're talking about, it is going to impact other areas of your life. It's like that ripple effect. You throw a pebble in the pond and all the ripples go out. And so if we're working specifically on your relationship, it will still have an impact in your work life, in your business, or even if you're not an entrepreneur, you're an employee, it will have an impact, and vice versa. And I think when you were talking about that, this word just popped into my mind, and it was acceptance. And I've noticed this with myself, and then of course with other people that I work with. It's about accepting also that we can't be good at everything. I mean, maybe that's a limiting belief. I don't know. Can we? Perhaps we can. Do we need to be good at every aspect of our business if we're an entrepreneur? I'm going to say no. I do believe that we need to know at least a little bit about every aspect of our business. You know, I was always like that when I worked in hotels. I used to be a hotel manager. I didn't feel comfortable asking someone to go and, you know, clean a room if I didn't know how to do it myself. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to go and clean the room as the hotel manager, like been there, done that. But I wanted to know about what was required in case I needed to step in. So as an entrepreneur, you know, we've got marketing, sales, building a website, social media, but we've also got the coaching, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, the list is so freaking long. And I got to a point at the beginning of this year where I had to accept that I needed help. Marketing is not my zone of genius, as my marketing coach calls it. So I hired someone who knows all about marketing and is helping me with that side of my business. I also went, you know what? Social media, it's not my zone of genius. I struggle with that for a variety of reasons. So I'm going to hire someone to help me do that. Now, yes, you've got to have the money to invest in that, but there are multitude of ways that you can do that. So I think going back to that word acceptance, it's like if we all need to accept that we need help. We need support, whether that be in hiring someone to do a job for us, building a community so that we've got someone we can say, hey, I'm having a really shit day. Can you just be there for me or help me out? No matter what it is. So I can't remember what your original question was, but I hope that sort of answers it in some way.
Yeah, it does. I mean, like it was really the question was around, like, can you separate that support out, you know, rather than having it together? Because for the longest time I was like, no, you know, I want if I'm going to have coaching, I want it to be spiritually inclined along with the business side of things. But I don't think that's not really when I really think about the support that I need, that's not it. And so then I go, okay, but what is it about the business coaching that I might need? And so I think when people are looking at any kind of support and any kind of engaging any practitioners and whatever else, I think you need to, and I encourage people to really think about what is it that you're really wanting out of it? What do you need? Does it have to be everything all at once from one person? Can it be separated out? Can you see one person for, you know, this one specific thing and see this person for the other side of things? You know, like can you find it in multiple resources rather than putting the pressure on just one thing and then being disappointed? And I think, again, giving ourselves permission to explore that and to allow ourselves to receive support in a multitude of different ways and be in acceptance that it isn't necessarily always just one. You've got multiple people that are helping you and they're specialists in what they do. So why wouldn't you do that? Why would you put pressure on it just coming from one space?
Well, let me ask you this, Maryanne, and this is, you know, so that your audience can get a sense of this. Do you just have one medical physician? Do you just go to, if you've got a medical problem, and I'm going to generalize here, you don't need to go into specifics, but they're just one person that you go to when you've got an ouchie of some description, do you just go to one person?
No.
Or do you have a team?
No, I don't see you know, medical professionals specifically, because I'm all about the holistic side of things. But yes,
So,
I've got a multitude of different people I've got a lot of different people. Yeah. And then there's and they specialize in different things. Absolutely.
Exactly. So that's the point I wanted to make. And yes, swap in holistic for I'm with you. I'm not saying same as you. We wouldn't you know, we wouldn't go if we had a stomach ache, we'd go to a specialist. You know, if we had a hormonal imbalance, we'd go to a specialist. And when I say specialist, it might be a kinesiologist, it might be a naturopath, a nutritionist, some would go to a GP, you know. So insert your favorite whatever here.
Yeah.
So that's the same in business. No, there's not one, in my opinion, there is not one person who can cover all bases. We need
Yeah.
help in different ways and at different points of our business and different points of our lives. So the business coach that I had last year, it's not who I'm working with this year because I'm working with someone else because our business has evolved. Will I be working with the same people next year or in a year's time? Probably not, because my business will have evolved.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm possibly going to continue working with several people. And on the flip side, I'm also working with, you know, another coach that's to do with my personal stuff, because that all has a flow-on effect with my business as well. Yeah. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely, you can separate it out. In any other part of your life, would you just have one person, one community, one specialist?
Yeah.
I'm guessing the answer is no.
No, and I mean, I just think that it's such a great point to make, and just giving yourself permission to have multiple, like, just, you know, choice. At the end of the day, it just comes down to choice. You get to choose what feels right for you and make your own combination, but
Yeah, absolutely.
allowing yourself to receive the support and understanding that, one, you don't have to do it by yourself. You shouldn't even, you should give yourself permission to not have to do it by yourself, because again, the community aspect is what our souls are longing for. That connection and that conversation and that sharing is where our growth is and what fills our heart space. That is what sustains us as a people.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
as entrepreneurs, and even as individuals, even if you don't run your own business, it is so easy to just get isolated and just to be on your own. I was thinking about the lockdowns and stuff that happened with COVID. I was in Melbourne and did the first year of the lockdowns over there, and I don't know that I've still ever really snapped out. I think I've just stayed in that space. I spend so much time on my own. I do love it though. I do. But I have to encourage myself, because I can feel sometimes the unsettling of that. And because I'm energetically sensitive as well, sometimes peopling drains the absolute fuck out of me, right? So it's like even that needs to be in a balance. But I can see how easy it is for people. It can be months and months of isolation, and you might be going to work and you know, you're going to the supermarket, there are people around you, but you are still so isolated. And I think now more than ever, people really need to think about how they're building those communities, and with the events of the world, that's going to become even more important, and it's going to force our hand, I think, in a lot of ways. My question to you is this: what would you say is the best strategy for creating an ideal life? It's a big question.
That is a massive question. What is the best strategy? How much longer do we have? Look, I'm not going to give you a whole strategy here, Maryanne, but I think we've already talked about it.
Yeah.
And the best strategy in my mind is curiosity.
Yeah.
Right? And asking questions, becoming aware. This is the beginning of a strategy, right? It's understanding who you are, which I know that's a big thing, that's a big question, and that's why, you know, there are people like you and me to help people do that, right?
Yeah.
But it's about curiosity. It starts at curiosity. Get curious. Start asking yourself questions. Start understanding what makes you tick, you know, why you think, say, and do the things that you do. Because when you understand that, that's actually how you will create the strategy. Because at the moment you're running a strategy, but you don't even know what it is.
Yep.
You know, I don't know what percentage, but a large percentage don't even know what their strategy is. And they've got no idea where they're going. So if you want to be purposeful about these next 20, 40, 60 years, however old you are, then you need to start getting curious and asking yourself questions, and you need to start directing yourself. So I know that that's not a definitive answer, because I don't know that there is a definitive answer about that, because even though we're all so similar, we're all the same as well. So, you know, we're going to have nuances in those strategies as well. But I'd say get curious.
I love that. And that would be my answer as well. Getting curious about yourself and being curious about other people. Instead of reacting, maybe just asking yourself, why might they be behaving in that way? Why might they be having that outburst, even though it's annoying and frustrating?
Well, I would
why?
switch that around, Maryanne. Why am I reacting this
Yeah.
way? Why
Yeah.
am I having this outburst?
Yeah.
Because I think, and this could be a whole other podcast, right? And I can see us going for a walk on the beach and having like this big discussion. Lots of conversations to be had, but it's about turning it inward. So when I say get curious, and you said this straight up, is get curious about yourself. You know what? Forget about other people for the time being.
Yeah.
Because they need to be doing this as well. And if we actually all did this and all spent some time getting curious about ourselves and understanding ourselves, everyone would be doing it. And therefore, we wouldn't need to worry about how other people are reacting, because they're already on top of it.
Yeah.
And this is where that whole conversation about how we interpret information and how we mirror it back to people, et cetera, et cetera. Get curious about yourself, ask yourself questions, and get to know yourself.
Yes, I agree. But I also think there's an opportunity for people to be interested more in other people, being curious about who they are as individuals, in particular in the networking space, in the business space. Like, actually genuinely choose to get to know who they are. Step out of the superficial. But again, it does start with you, because that's how they're treating themselves as well. And so you're right, it is a lead-on effect that would happen naturally anyway if people were curious about who they were, because then it would almost be like an automatic behavior that would come. It'd be new neural pathways that would activate for them to be curious about others, because what's within happens without, right?
Yeah, and there'll be a reason why they're not being curious, why they're not approaching someone, why they're not asking questions, because that'll go back to that question, what happened to you to make you like this? So unless you're curious with yourself first, and you become aware and you identify what the root cause of perhaps why you're like that, if you don't address that, then you won't even get to the point perhaps of being curious about others, because you'll have this underlying fear, guilt, shame, anger, whatever it is.
Yeah, and that's what leads to people not feeling seen, and then they don't feel like they want to be seen, and that comes back to our earlier conversation. Everything is linked back to that one thing. So I actually think you did answer the question. Curiosity, being curious about yourself is the best strategy for creating your ideal life. I think you nailed it. I really do. Beck,
Awesome.
what do you love most about being a heart-led change maker?
What do I love most? Wow, that's such a big question. What do I love most? Look, what I love is that just helping one person. I like the ripple effect. We talked about the ripple effect earlier. And I love that even when I can help or support one person, that then that person goes on to help one person, and that person goes on to help one person, and so on it goes. So what I love about being a heart-led practitioner, entrepreneur, coach, whatever word is that you want to use, is the impact that I, as one person in my little office in, Adelaide, can make on the world by sharing what I know and what I've learned and what I've experienced. So it's a very non-succinct answer, and you've given me something to think about, which I love. I'm going to start asking myself some questions around that. But that's probably what I would say is the impact that I can see that what I can do makes on other people and how they then transform their lives. Because I've seen some big transformations. I've seen, you know, and it's hard to even measure, right? Because what you think is big might not be big for another person. What you think is small might not be small. I've just seen some incredible transformations and people saying, I love my new life, you know, life changing, best money I've ever spent. I now love myself. Like, I mean, can you get any better than that when somebody completely changes the way that they feel about themselves?
Yeah. I mean,
That's what I love.
it's an incredible feeling, and it is it's soul fulfilling, and I agree that
Yeah.
that is definitely one of the reasons. But I think our love for being a change maker, a heart-led change maker, changes. I think at different points of the journey, our thoughts about it changes. But being of
Yeah.
service and knowing that one conversation, one exchange, one therapy session, one coaching session, whatever it is, just one conversation can change so much. And I can't remember for the life of me, but years ago I read, you will never know, your
Yeah.
brain would never your brain would never be able to digest the impact of one exchange, one smile at somebody, one conversation, one anything in a positive. You will never know the impact that has, the ripple effect that it has, because if you really understood, it would be overwhelming. You would never know
Yeah.
that lead on. And it's so true. When you're being of service, it might be that you have some clients and then you stop seeing them because they've grown or they don't need it anymore, whatever it is. But your conversations, your truth, your resonance stays with them for years. It will stay with them for the rest of their lives. They'll think about that experience and that exchange, and they're sharing that knowledge. They're paying it forward in whatever they're choosing to do as well. And it might be with their
Yeah.
family, their kids, their partner. It might be in their workplace, whatever. But it is special, and it is sacred, and it's why I love chatting to people like yourself, because I it's one of the things that I value most in this world is people who are choosing, because it is a choice,
Mm.
choosing to be in
Yes.
that space, and they're wearing their heart on their sleeves, and they're good people doing amazing things. So thank you so much for all of that work and sharing so much of this gorgeous knowledge with me today. I love all the brain things, as you know. But
Yep. Yep.
I will share all of your links to all of your work in the details of this podcast. But how can our audience best connect with you if they wanted to? How can they find you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Easiest way to connect with me is on Instagram. We are Moonbeam Monday. So I haven't even mentioned the name of our business, but we are Moonbeam Monday. And so the best way to connect is on Instagram or simply through our website, which is moonbeammonday.com.au, which you can pop in the notes. And we love connect. You know, we talked about connection, we talked about community. I love connecting with people. I love sharing this information. So yeah, would love to connect with anybody who's up for it.
And you're sharing a lot of really great tips on Instagram that I've been noticing. And one of the things that I just wanted to let our audience know is on your website, you've got some audio that they can download and purchase as well. The hypnosis audio,
Yes.
which is so amazing. And I saw the one for long distance travel as well when I was on
Yeah.
there the other day. I saw that that's new. So it's definitely worth taking a look at Beck's website and seeing what she's got available there. If you're interested in receiving some support, she's a great person to chat to and to work with. So thank you, Beck, for joining me on the show today. I've loved our conversation, and I'm sure we'll have many more in the future.
No doubt. Yeah, thanks for having me, Maryanne. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Thanks, Beck.